You are listening to the Navigating Adult ADHD podcast, where it's all about education, support, and coaching for adults with ADHD. I'm your host, Zena, a late diagnosed ADHDer, here to help you unpack the challenges, frustrations, and the positive side of living with ADHD. With my no BS approach, I'll help you to better understand your unique ADHD brain and how you can work with it to feel better, increase your self-confidence, improve your relationships, and ultimately achieve your goals. Hello, my beautiful friends. Welcome back to Navigating Adult ADHD. Today we're going to be talking about dopamine, specifically 5 things that we really need to know if we have ADHD, because we are very driven by dopamine. Before we dive into that though, a couple of things I just wanted to share with you. So I wanted to start by asking yourself a question. What is one thing that you like and appreciate about yourself, and why? I love this question for a variety of reasons. However, I've just finished coaching a client, and this is something that actually came up. And I was thinking about the answer for myself. One thing I like and appreciate about myself is my dramaticness, which other people might call being too much or over the top or whatever, right? It's actually something that most of my life people criticized me for and tried to use against me or put me down for. And thank you to coaching and so much of the work I have done on myself and my brain, I now love that I am dramatic, and I really, really appreciate it because it is joyful. It makes other people laugh and it makes them light up, and I just find it so fun and I enjoy it in other people. So that's why it matters to me. That's why it is meaningful and important to me. So again, the question is, what is one thing that you like and appreciate about yourself? And as always, you are welcome to share with me. You can come hang out over on Instagram, on Facebook, through the Contact Me page over on the website. Come and hang out. I'll link to all of that in the show notes, okay? And I'm just going to remind you as well to hit follow, because we've got ADHD, my friends, and we forget. So if you haven't yet hit follow, I want to encourage you to do that. Not only will you get this episode, the podcast, downloaded to your phone each week so that you don't have to go and look for it, but also it will help other people with ADHD to find us and feel less alone. So one more thing before we dive in is, did you guys know that dopamine dressing is a thing? We're on the topic of dopamine today. So dopamine dressing is where you dress in things that are really joyful to you. So it could be, specific, I don't know, like gothic, like a specific type of clothing, right? A specific kind of, what's the word I want? Like costume that you love. Or like for me, it is wearing bright, colorful things that are really joyful to you that actually provide a source of dopamine. For example, today I'm wearing a very bright, colorful knitted sweater, and it's multicolored. Like it's got one arm that's like pink, and then the body's like half pink, half yellow, but it's a different pink. And then there's like an orange arm, and it's just like wild. And I'm wearing these new earrings that I got recently, and they are fluoro pink with sparkles. That is my dopamine dressing. So it's wearing clothes that bring so much joy to you. I've also got fluoro pink fluffy slippers. So that's how I'm rolling today. Dopamine dressing. It's a thing, my friends, and I love it. So while we talk about dopamine is big for those of us with ADHD because it plays a significant role in motivation, right? So feelings of motivation and feelings of satisfaction, like being satisfied in our life and kind of how we feel overall, our well-being in our life. And it also supports the function of our executive functions in the brain. So it plays a significant role in things like working memory and our ability to focus, okay? And it feels good. So there's that, right? It's often referred to as the feel-good neurotransmitter because dopamine does feel good when it's released into our system. Now, dopamine is something that ADHD brains have less of. while there is no test specifically for dopamine, like you can't do a saliva test or a blood test to measure your levels, researchers have discovered that ADHD brains do have less dopamine than neurotypical brains, right? Brains without ADHD. So we know that our brains do have less dopamine, all right? And that means that we then have less motivation and less satisfaction in our tank each day. We wake up with a little bit less in the tank. So understanding dopamine actually helps us to work with our ADHD brains, which is what I'm all about. All right, my friends, it's my life mission, helping everybody with ADHD work with their brains. So understanding dopamine is really crucial in that, okay, because we can create more motivation, more focus, we can achieve our goals and have more joy and satisfaction in our life when we are deliberate with and have a better understanding of dopamine, okay, and we work with it, all right? So let's talk about that. Now, I've got 5 things that I'm going to share with you, and I think that number 4 is probably the most important one, all right? But I have them in a specific order for a reason, which you will probably see. So, starting from the top, number 1, we are always seeking dopamine for stimulation and because it feels good, right? So ADHD brains are always seeking dopamine, and it is even more gratifying to the ADHD brain. So that means when we get dopamine, it is even more pleasurable to our brain, all right? So you may notice this, that you're seeking dopamine, especially if you take medication and your meds wear off. So I will often notice this kind of around the 7 to 8:39ish mark. That is when I notice it because my medication is worn off, right? And most ADHD medication helps to raise our dopamine levels. So I notice that I start dopamine seeking. And so that could look like eating when you're not hungry. It might be picking a fight with your partner, which is one of the ones that I might do in bed late at night. Dopamine seeking could also be speeding or scrolling on your phone or like shopping online, right? You might be scrolling through the Temu app, adding things to your cart. It could be substance abuse. So it could be that you drink alcohol and, that's what you do every night when your medication wears off. Now, if you don't take medication, you may notice that you're dopamine seeking throughout the day. You may notice more of these things happening. Again, our ADHD brains are always seeking dopamine to have more in our system because 1, it feels good, and 2, we want to make up for the fact that we've got less, and we need this important neurotransmitter to help with getting things done and feeling good, okay? So that's number 1. We're always seeking dopamine and stimulation. Number 2 is ADHD brains are more sensitive to dopamine. Okay, I just mentioned that. The experience of dopamine when it's released in our system, we're more sensitive to that. And of course, because it feels so good, we want more of that good feeling. This also speaks to why our ADHD brains are more prone to addiction. So studies show that people with ADHD have a higher percentage of addictive behaviors or, getting into addictions that negatively impact their lives, whether that be, drugs or alcohol or gambling. It could be, overeating food, anything like that. It could be, gaming for 12 hours a day, whatever. But our ADHD brains are more sensitive to dopamine, okay? And so when it feels so good, we want to keep doing it because it feels good, gives us that release, and we want to keep getting that. Number 3, our brains do a behind-the-scenes dopamine calculation. Basically, our brain goes, how much dopamine is this thing going to cost me? Like, how much will this activity cost me versus how much am I going to get in return? So, for example, if I was to open my phone right now and scroll through TikTok videos, let's say that cost me 1 coin of dopamine. But when I'm scrolling through those videos and I'm watching all of those cat videos and like all those things I love to see, I'm going to get 5 coins of dopamine in return. So of course, that sounds like a great investment. I spend 1, I get 5, awesome, right? Now, you might look at your to-do list and you might see, hey, I've got to write that book proposal, but I just keep putting it to the next day and the next day and the next day, because my brain's looking at it and it does this calculation behind the scenes that I don't even notice is happening. And my brain goes, man, I'm going to have to spend a shitload of dopamine to write that book proposal, but I'm not going to get anything in return for a while. So I'm just going to push that away for later. Okay? So this speaks to why we seek instant gratification over longer term rewards. This is something that a lot of people with ADHD do, right? Because our brain, it wants to spend less dopamine in order to feel good. And it's going to prioritize things that feel good now, right? So for example, if you've got a goal of like losing 10 kilos, which is I think roughly 22 pounds if you speak the pounds language. But if that's your goal, if you want to lose this weight, and you get to the end of the day and you're tired and your brain is like seeking dopamine, and it's like, oh, like there's a chocolate bar in the fridge and I know I'm on a diet, but like I really want it. The brain's going to go, yeah, but if I go and like have that candy bar in the fridge, that chocolate bar in the fridge, like it's going to cost me 1 coin of dopamine to walk over there and grab it, but I'm going to get 6 back straight away as soon as I eat it. And it's concerned with getting the dopamine. It's not concerned with trying to lose weight to achieve the goal, which you have, which is like way down the track, right? So again, the brain is always doing this like behind the scene calculation for dopamine. And the brain always just wants to feel good. Now, number 4, my friends, I think this is the most important one. Not all dopamine is created equal. This is huge, okay? So if we were to like rewind about 400,000 years back to like the caveman days, okay? Dopamine back then in our brains, dopamine was what created the motivation we needed to go out and do the hard shit that would keep us alive. So dopamine would help us to go out and hunt and to build shelter and to gather food and supplies and berries and explore new places and raise our families. Okay, that dopamine required, like when it was released into our brain as we were out there hunting and all of that, and like we catch a wild beast and we get the dopamine and we come back, right? That required effort. All of those things, they required effort. Okay, now today we live in a very different world. We literally live in a world that is saturated in dopamine. It is like at our fingertips, okay? It is literally everywhere. We no longer have to work for it. So I could grab my phone right now and I could just order a pizza and I could watch Netflix and drink a bottle of wine and snack on some lollies. Dopamine, 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 right? Like it's available so easy everywhere. Our phones, every single one of us, you're probably listening to this on a phone right now, right? That phone has all of these different apps and all of these different notifications and bings and dings and videos that you can watch and podcasts like this that you can listen to. And we can get dopamine so easily, right? We can scroll online and click add to cart and order something. And literally, we live in a world saturated by dopamine and we no longer have to work for it. So what happens is when we go to those quick and easy sources of dopamine like that, we cause spikes and crashes and spikes and crashes and spikes and crashes in our dopamine levels, okay? And over time, what that can do is it can actually reduce the amount of dopamine we wake up to in the tank each day, all right? So if you were to imagine a neurotypical person was to wake up with a tank half full of dopamine, okay? And we were to wake up with a tank that only had a quarter full. Over time, if we continue to spike and crash our levels with these, quick and easy, no effort dopamine things, we can actually wake up with a little less in the tank over time. Okay. I also want to encourage you, if that sounds like something you're doing, if you're spiking and crashing a lot and you feel like, hey, I wake up with less and less dopamine in the tank each day, I've got episodes called the Dopamine Hangover, which I'll link to in the show notes. And I've got an episode called Dopamine Debt, the links to Burnout, Apathy and Addiction, I think it's called. But that talks about how when we continue to do this to our dopamine, we can actually end up with so little that we don't have any motivation. We've got no drive. We don't enjoy things in our life anymore. Like we struggle, and we can often become addicted to, maybe it's like our phone, or we're addicted to alcohol, and that's the only thing that we look forward to and enjoy. Okay. So again, I will link to those episodes, but I do want to stay here with not all dopamine is created equal. So if you were to imagine a lemon, okay, and I'm going to chop the lemon in half. And if I was to get one half of that lemon and squeeze all of the juice out, that's what happens when we go to a quick dopamine hit. So examples of that are things that don't require effort, such as fast food. It could be, smoking cigarettes. It could be shopping, sugar, like lollies, candy, whatever. It could be alcohol, video games. All of those things are examples of getting dopamine that is quick, it's easy to get, and it's short term. So back to the lemon, what you're effectively doing is as soon as you pick up your phone, you start squeezing all the juice out of the lemon. When you put your phone down, you've squeezed all the juice. There's no more left. It's done. Okay? So you're only getting dopamine while you're doing the thing. As soon as you stop doing the thing, that's it. You're done. Now, that is quick release dopamine. We've also got short release dopamine, which creates longer term satisfaction. Okay, so these are examples of dopamine that actually require effort. But if we come back to the lemon example, it's like you've got the lemon and you're slowly squeezing the juice. Drip, 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 drip. Okay, so what that means is when you stop the activity, you've still got juice in your lemon and it keeps dripping for a while after. Meaning that you get dopamine during the experience and then again after that, right? Like it's still in your system continuing to be released. So examples of slow release dopamine are things like exercise. Okay, for me, I walk twice a day, morning and night. I do 10,000 steps, and I also do it in nature. So getting out in nature, right? Being out in nature is another example. Getting sunshine on your skin. Cold water therapy is another example of one of the best sources of dopamine, which I'm still working my way to, okay? Working on your goals. Any hobbies you enjoy. If you enjoy playing the guitar or crocheting or, whatever your hobbies are, anything like that. Also eating protein. Protein helps with the production of dopamine. Those things require effort from us, and they are slow release dopamine. So again, there's the example of quick release where you squeeze all the juice out the lemon as soon as you stop the activity. That's it. You will experience a drop in your dopamine levels, okay, because you've stopped and you drop, right? Drop back to your baseline, maybe below, right? You might even crash. But then there is that slow release, which will continue squeezing that lemon, continue to feel good even after you stop the activity. Right? You go for a walk, a 20-minute walk around the park. Once you finish that, you're going to continue to feel good even after that activity, right? The lemon, the juice is still being dripped out. So when we are able to increase our slow dopamine activities, what we do is we help ourselves to generate the stimulation that our brains need, okay? We can increase our motivation to be able to do things. We will also improve our executive functions, so we will improve focus and memory. We will boost our mood, and we'll actually, over time, we can gradually increase the overall amount of dopamine we wake up to each morning, meaning over time we can increase how much is in that tank. So instead of waking up with a quarter of a tank, you can wake up with a little bit more, okay? So there are so many benefits to increasing our slow release dopamine activities. Now, just to be clear, I'm not saying you never do the quick dopamine stuff. Trust me, like I love a glass of wine. I like to watch cat videos. Like I'm not stopping any of that. But it's about making sure we have a good amount of slow release dopamine. And if anything, we tip the scales more in that favor, or we prioritize those things a little bit more, because that is going to help hugely with how much motivation we have and how satisfied we feel in our life, how happy we are, right? Helps hugely with our mood. All right, I could talk about that all day. I get very passionate. Number 5 is, and this is interesting. Dopamine is never, ever satisfied. Okay, so dopamine's motto is always more. You buy a new car, and a few months later, you're going to want a new car. You get a new job, and then 6 months later, you want more money, you want a new title, you want a promotion, you start looking elsewhere. Okay? You buy a brand new handbag, you love it, you're obsessed with your new handbag, but 3 months later, you see a gorgeous new bag by your favorite designer and you want it. Right? Even though you don't need it, doesn't matter. Right? Dopamine's motto is always more, bigger, better, again. Okay? You might have one drink after work tonight, and then tomorrow you're going to want another one, and then the next day another one, and then the day after that you're going to want 2 glasses, not just one. Right? Again, dopamine is never satisfied. This is very good to know because it's always going to tell you you need more. You need more. And it's going to say, hey, when I get that, I'm going to be so satisfied and happy. Yay. Not true. Sneaky. Right? It's going to tell you, oh yeah, this is it. Once I've got this, I'm going to feel great. No. Right? I'm going to have that glass of wine tonight, not tomorrow, because I'm not going to want it tomorrow, because I'm going to have it today and enjoy it today, and I'm not going to need it tomorrow. But no, tomorrow dopamine's going to tell you, I want that wine. Okay? Dopamine is never satisfied. So again, understanding dopamine really does help us to work with our ADHD brains. Okay? I'm very passionate about this. This is one of the things I help people to do because it does increase our motivation, our focus, helps us achieve the goals that we have, and ultimately it increases our joy in life and our satisfaction. Okay? It is so important. So I'll just scroll through these 5 things real quick again. Number 1, we are always seeking dopamine, okay, aka stimulation. Number 2 is ADHD brains are more sensitive to dopamine. Number 3, our brain does a behind the scenes calculation of how much dopamine will this cost me versus how much am I going to get in return. Number 4, not all dopamine is created equal. Again, remember we've got the quick release dopamine, which is that short-term fun, doesn't require effort. Then we've got slow release dopamine, which is the longer-term satisfaction and does require some effort. And number 5, dopamine is never satisfied. All right, my friends, that is it for this episode. If you're enjoying the podcast, please remember to hit follow. And if you have an extra minute, if you could leave us a review, I would be so grateful. Huge love. Take care. I will see you soon. If you are loving what you're learning here on the podcast, but you still feel like your ADHD is holding you back, I can help. Using evidence-based coaching tools and my own experiences, I'll help you to manage your emotions and feel better, to increase your productivity, grow your self-confidence, and create the life that you were meant for. Visit zenajones.com/thrive and schedule an ADHD support session to get started.